People ask me all the time what I shoot with. So I figured I would make a video going over my top 5 favorite pieces of gear as of 2020. So here we go. So first and foremost, my favorite piece of equipment is my Panasonic GH5. So this is the camera that I use for all of my everyday shoots. It is lightweight and it is a micro four thirds sensor. So the lenses are also lightweight. So when you're doing a 7-8 hour shoot, this isn't going to kill your arm if you're running around doing handheld. Another thing that I like is, unlike most DSLR cameras, you have the option for continuous shooting. So if you're doing something like a high school play, or if you're doing something with some sort of ceremony like a wedding, if it's going over 30 minutes, this will actually keep the recording so you don't lose anything from that ceremony. You have a lot of recording options, whether you want to do 1080, 4K, Ultra HD, or anything in between. This camera does it all. I also want to discuss really quickly that this camera has in-camera stabilization, which gives you a lot more freedom to do things like handheld video, and your footage isn't going to be as shaky as other DSLRs because the sensor is making sure that it smooths it out and you don't have to do that in post. Lastly, all of these features are in a camera body that is under $2,000. My next favorite piece of equipment happens to be audio equipment because it's really important on a shoot to have good audio. So this is the Sennheiser AVX Digital. It is a lavalier microphone, which means that it comes with a microphone pack, a microphone, which I'm actually using it right now, and a receiver. I like this because you have two options. You can use this with an XLR into something like a Zoom, or if you have a module to go on top of your camera, but you also can plug it right into your camera with a mini jack. So it gives you multiple options to use this with different kinds of camera, different kinds of gear. These are really reliable microphones because I've used them in rural areas, but I've also used them in places like New York City. Sometimes with wireless microphones, you get interference between anything from a news truck, a TD station, or just anything that uses radio frequencies. And I've never had a problem getting a connection. So these are reliable and I really like them. Next up, you need to be able to see what's on screen. So we're going to talk about lenses. I personally like the Canon L-series lenses because they are a fixed aperture lens, which means that if you zoom in, it doesn't change the aperture on you. Sometimes with cheaper lenses, the farther you zoom in, the higher the f-stop minimum is. So you might be starting at a 3.5, but you might be zooming in and getting to a 5.6, which makes your image very much darker. So these lenses don't change, and it's really helpful in dark rooms and different kinds of shooting situations. A couple more things that I like about these lenses is they are a full frame lens, so you can put them on different kinds of camera bodies and still have that full view of everything on the sensor. And the glass is actually just very good and very crisp inside the lens, whereas if you're using a cheaper lens, it would be paper glass, and that's why it doesn't look the same. These lenses have manual focus, autofocus, and in-lens stabilization, so you can get that smooth footage. And lastly, it just looks more impressive to a client. So as I mentioned, I use a Panasonic GH5, but I use Canon lenses. What I need is a converter that I can put that lens onto that body. So I get the Metabones Speedboosters. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to obviously connect the lens in the body, but it actually gives me extra stops of light. So a Canon lens that will go down to 2.8, I can bring it down to 1.8 on my camera. So if I'm in a dark room where I need something really shallow, it gives me that extra room that I love, need, want. One of the things that people know me for is liking very smooth footage. So obviously my last piece of equipment is going to be a stabilizer. So this is the Zhiyun Crane, and I really love it because it's lightweight. Obviously, if I'm using this for a long time, I can't support doing something with a heavy weight for hours and hours on end. So the gimbal has a couple of interesting settings. So if you take it, the first thing that I love is there's a setting where it'll just move with the direction that you are pointing it. If you hit mode, you can control it with a joystick. The last setting that it has allows you to bring it down and bring it up and be nice and stable. So you have a lot of different shots that you can incorporate into your videos. Should I mention this? So these are my top 5 pieces of gear, but this may not be perfect for you. I've kind of figured out through years of testing and doing different kinds of jobs that this works for me, but maybe you are a Sony person, or maybe you want to use wired mics. Who knows? But this is just a little background on what I personally shoot with.